This is the second episode of the Radio Beaver podcast, and the guests from the first episode, the debut episode, Gary McCann and Jacques, are with me now because we're going to try and catch up on all the stuff that's been happening over the last couple of weeks. As always, there's been so much going on, and as always with the club, and we've certainly tried to keep you up to date as much as possible, but it's certainly been tricky because things have been changing daily, even hourly at some point. So the best thing to do is to catch up on it all. You would have seen the announcement yesterday that the club has voted to null and void the season, and we will discuss the reasons and the whys and what falls of that in a bit. Firstly, Saturday, 3:00, we obviously should ideally be playing a game. I'm sure you would obviously rather be out there on the pitch, and especially trying to make amends, shall we say, for a narrow defeat against Fleet on Tuesday night.
Yes, Seb, we would have liked to have been in a perfect world, of course. We knew that there was maybe the chance of Saturday's game not going ahead with Slough's statement and their stand in recent weeks. So that was always in doubt. And with where we found ourselves in the timing, league-wise and club-wise, we honestly did feel that, Ebbsfleet could well, be the swan song as such, and we was hoping not to be the case. There were back-to-back games. It was against tough opposition. We'd have loved to have been put in the wrongs from Tuesday for sure, but we come up against decent opposition, and they caught us in a half-hour period in the game, because I did feel for 35 minutes we were second best all over the pitch, and although we recovered and we got back to our normal self, we couldn't recover the game. But Saturdays without football are not the same, Seb. I've done a double session work-wise. I've been on the bike. I've been out for a walk, and you're just lost in yourself Saturdays. It's lovely to be around the family, obviously, but not the same Saturdays without football for sure.
Just a quick one. How cold was it on Tuesday night? It sounded cold from everyone I know that was there, and obviously the figures suggest it was cold. So how cold was it?
Pitch side, it was bitterly coldest I think we've experienced for a long time. But then it's more likely the coldest period we've had in the southeast for a long time. But yeah, it was cold, very cold. They done extremely well. Credit must go to the ground staff and all at Ebbsfleet for getting the game on, because the pitch, although it had a coating of ice in certain areas where they'd brushed it, and underneath it was pretty soft, which was a surprise. If there was any areas of danger there, I'm sure the ref would have chose to call the game off. But it played brilliantly considering the conditions. But yeah, it was Baltic conditions, as they say.
Yeah, I've not seen you as wrapped up in a post-match interview for a long time. But Jacques, how cold was it in the stands?
I was perishing. I think the coldest, my kneecaps were the coldest. My kneecaps were still frozen when I got home. And it was just one of those nights where you couldn't get warm at all, especially if you're sitting down doing nothing.
Yeah.
And the snow was still coming down. So, yeah, it was a particularly bitter night.
Yeah,
exactly. It was a pretty cold performance for 35 minutes as well. So,
I have to say, it wasn't worth enduring the cold for those initial moments. But we certainly came into it in the second half. And I think on another day, if we'd taken our chances, we would have come away with something.
I think, as always, the microphones did pick up perhaps your displeasure, Gary, in certain moments, like it often does in these behind closed doors games. But when I was listening to it on Radio Kent. But I suppose I'll just go back a little bit. Obviously, we had, last time we spoke, it was a 2-week suspension for football. Some clubs, as you mentioned, Slough, for example, have decided not to return to playing after that suspension. Jacques, just out of interest, why did we decide to play?
Well, Seb, I think, as I said in the press release that went out yesterday, our intention has always been to continue the season. We're playing very well at the moment. We've got a great squad. Changing room's a very good one. And, Gary and I have talked a lot about the work that's gone into getting the boys to this stage over the past 2-3 years. It's gone in that sort of 2-3 year cycle, and you get to a peak in that cycle. And I think we're approaching that peak. So we've always wanted to continue the football, just to reward ourselves for the hard work that's gone in, and certainly the players as well. They don't want to stop. They want to continue playing the football, as that's what they want to do. With that in mind, we've always, I suppose, had our fingers crossed that there would be some sort of resolution around the whole situation with the grants and loans funding. And it's been a really difficult couple of weeks. But during that period, we wanted to honour the fixtures that we had in the sense that we were still continuing the season. We had the fixture against Tunbridge who we were very thankful for them to put on the game and get it on last Saturday. You know, the boys were superb. It was a joy to go down there and watch it. To be fair, it was nice to be back after the hiatus to see some really good quality football. And then we were supposed to be having Chippenham Town on the Tuesday. They obviously had declared their position, which fully understand, and we don't cast judgment on anyone else, and everyone looks after their own football clubs the way they need to look after them. But we felt that it was a good idea to get the game on with Ebbsfleet, and as Gary said, they did a fantastic job outside of COVID and funding and everything else to battle the conditions, and thanks to their volunteers and everyone who made that happen. We really did intend to continue the season. And in fact, even after the announcement yesterday, we're very much hoping that there is a swift resolution to this whole situation, because the worst thing now that can happen is for this to drag on for weeks and weeks. And we've actually, although obviously we haven't got a game today, we have got a fixture scheduled for Tuesday. And this now makes it very difficult because we've declared our position. However, we still have to think about honouring these fixtures. So in that vein, we intend to be going down to Concord to play on Tuesday. Which might seem a little bit counterintuitive to some people, and I suppose it is, but that's the ridiculous situation we find ourselves in. The National League has come out and sanctioned clubs for non-fulfilment of fixtures, which they have to do following the protocols, but realistically, I can't see any major punishment coming in that area because there's so many clubs involved. So it's just a real mess at the moment, and as I say, I just hope that we can see a swift resolution and a clear path forward for the ending of the season or the continuation, however it may be, and a return to football with fans and everything, hopefully for a new season, centenary season for us, starting in August.
Yeah, I mean, that was an important point I want to get across. Obviously, we are planning at the moment to be playing Concord on Tuesday night. So, Gary, you're preparing the players as normal for a Tuesday night game.
Yeah. Well, it's been a tough week, Seb. I think we were still at the ground at 10 to 11 on Tuesday night. We'd discussed it at board level, Jacques, Ben and myself, to try and find a solution to continue the season. I can't stress enough how the last 2 or 3 weeks how much has gone into trying to make this happen. And I was speaking with the players Tuesday night, trying to get them to bend and what can be achieved in the change room in terms of budget cuts and wage cuts. And the players were brilliant. I can't honestly, again, we speak about change rooms and players within that change room. There's not one in that group that weren't prepared to help the cause and try and make this happen. When me and Jacques spoke 24, 48 hours on, it was pretty evident that even with cuts and quite big cuts, it was just still going to be a big hole come the end of the season on the gamble of promotion. So Thursday we trained as normal. Jacques come down once we'd made the decision and presented the situation that the club is in and where we find ourselves. And it was a somber night, Thursday night. It really was. It was quite emotional. There was a lot of heavy hearts. There was a reality that it could be coming to an end. But that's not definite yet, Seb, is it? We're still waiting on the resolution of the league and where they go with this as much as the votes and such like. What we've done is we presented our position and our situation to the club. And I know how difficult that was for Jacques and myself and the board to come to this. But look, Tuesday night is a game that we've got to prepare for. I put it back into the players' laps after speaking to Jacques yesterday, and there was the players are adamant that there's no question that we'd fulfil the fixture if needed. We were going to train today. We was going to train this morning, but we've given the weekend off just with some responsibility taken from each individual to get a bit done in preparation for Tuesday night. And as Jacques has said, if there's no decision made Monday or Tuesday and fixtures do go ahead, then we have to be as professional as we always are as a football club. It's the way we work. It's what we are. I think the way we've conducted ourselves right from day dot going back to last March has been, nothing short of perfect in real trying circumstances. So fulfilling the fixture Tuesday comes as just the norm for our football club. We won't step away from it just because we made a decision, and a difficult decision at that.
Yeah. And talking of that decision, Jacques, obviously you've had to make some difficult decisions in the club since you became chairman. Was that the hardest one?
Yeah, it absolutely was. As Gary said, Thursday night was an emotional night because you're standing there in front of all those guys just basically telling them that they're not going to be playing football. And, well, in theory, they're not going to be playing football for the next 3-4 months. It's a really difficult thing to decide on, and it's. I mean, even before just before standing before them, you can actually let's change our minds here. Let's just plough on. Things might change, but we have to be sensible about the priorities here. And whilst it is important for those guys to be rewarded for the efforts they put in, the priority has always been for us to look after this football club and keep it in as good a state as we can, and prepare it for the future, and to finish off 3-4 months of football without the income streams that are so desperately needed. It just doesn't make any sense, and I think it would be remiss of us to go forward just for our own satisfaction and an ego, if you like, to get the season finished. And the other thing, I think that the other thing which really tipped the balance is, where is this season going to go? You've got such division between the National League, the National League North, the National League South, the clubs within the National League South. Ultimately, who knows what we're going to end up with? But if it was to continue, it's not going to be a full league. Where's the value in it? Gary and I talked about this. If we were to get promoted, which I think we've got a really good chance of promotion this season, would we want to get promoted without fans there? What would we be getting promoted in to? The National League, what guys will it take next season? There's so many unknowns around it. To take a massive financial punt to try and achieve that, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And that was the conclusion we came to.
Yeah, I want to add on to that, Seb. I want to add on to that, Seb, because it'd be easy for our changing room to have this mindset, which they haven't. I can assure you. There was 1 or 2 questions asked after, 1 or 2 little quotes I've seen different places, and even speaking to one man, is there a lack of ambition? Is there a lack of ambition within the football club? Now, I don't think there's no more ambitious manager than myself. I don't think there's no more ambitious board and chairman in Jacques. We want success. I can assure you, we want success, but it's not to be done at any expense. And I come to the realisation of that over the course of the last 7 days. We could more likely take a real punt as a football club to get promotion, and more likely have a better chance this year than we'll ever have. It's going to be a challenge to back up the last 18 months for sure, but that's my job to do that. But we'd have got into the National League in a position of what strength and what support financially in the most unforgiving and top echelon of non-league football. And like Jacques has said, not enjoying the experience with the most important part of any non-league football club, which is the fans. So you come to that decision very quickly. I'm not an egotistical person. This isn't about me. This isn't about what I need and what I require and what I want on my CV. There's a bigger picture here. I know there's managers in our division that at any expense of the football club, they couldn't care less. They just want it for themselves. And there is certain managers that have that mindset. There's certain managers and chairmen that can afford, and football clubs that can afford the big pump that's required. But I'm very much on the inside and in the heartbeat of the football club and at the front of the ship driving it. And I've got to look at that bigger picture, Seb, and let's just make one thing straight. And I really want to make that point in this podcast. There is no lack of ambition on my part or the football club's part. This is a sensible decision. This is a decision that's thinking of the football club over and above anything. No, like Jack said, no egos, no individual, gains or accolades. This is about protecting a football club that's more important than any one individual.
Exactly that. And I think, to be fair, the reaction's been, I haven't seen a negative reaction on our social media channels. Everyone seems to understand that it's a difficult but necessary decision at this stage, because Jacques, just to bring it back, if we're talking about a punt, it would be a hell of a punt, even if we did have the means to do it, wouldn't you? It's a big ask, because as good as we are playing, there are still 6, 7, 8 teams, 9 teams that would be fighting for a similar position to us. So it's a hell of an ask, isn't it? As good as this team has been,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think under normal circumstances, at this stage in the season, in the position we're in, if it was normal times, Gary and I would be talking about what the next steps would be to tweak things if we needed to tweak them, and how we would possibly improve the squad to get us to the over the line, if you like, to that promotion push. But we can't do that because it's not a normal time. So everything becomes very difficult to manage. And it would be, even without tweaking the team, whatever, just the cost of running a football club at our level. I don't think people fully appreciate sometimes exactly how high those costs are. And as Gary alluded to, if you've got a very rich benefactor, that might be something that can be handled. But from our perspective, I've got this club to a position where we want it to be as self-sustainable as possible. And that means that we have to look to the future and how we grow the club. We've got a very good academy now with Steve Bates at the head of it, which is miles away from the academy when I came into the football club. It's totally changed around, and that's something that we want to grow, and we want to grow that so that we can start producing more footballers internally rather than having to look outside. That is a long-term goal, but to do that, we've got to improve our facilities. We've got to look to accommodate more personnel if we're going to grow that academy. All of these things will require future investment. And so we have to think about those projects and being able to carry those out as we plan to over the next sort of 2 to 5 years. And sometimes you just have to take a breath and say, actually, maybe that spend would be better spent in the future when the circumstances are as they are at the moment. It's a fine balance between what's on the pitch now and what we're going to be doing in the future. But as Gary said, at no point is this a lack of ambition. This is purely decisions that have been made relative to the current situation which we find ourselves in and the National League finds itself in. We can reassure everyone that there is definitely ambition at this football club, as no one goes out there to draw a game or lose a game. We go out there to win and to put on the best possible performance we can. Otherwise, what's the point in competing?
Yeah.
And I know that Gary and I both share that mindset, but you do that within your means.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that, and it's easy for me to say because I know the relationship, obviously, between you guys and obviously the relationship between Gary and the football club a lot more than most. But Gary, you're very much on the same page as the board and the owners, and that can only help us going forward, whatever that is.
Yeah, for sure. I've had a grounding to that as well in my previous job. We worked through some extremely tough times at my previous job. We went from having a home to no home, having 2 or 3 different ground shares, working with no budget, some budget, a bit of a budget, and then I tried to grow the football club. And maybe some would say I stayed at that football club quite a bit longer than I should have, but I felt a duty to care. I'd bought into the long-term project as such, and trying to make it as sustainable as we possibly could and take it as far as we possibly could. And that'll serve me well going forward now. I understand, I look at it and I look at the bigger picture. It's easy to be selfish when you find yourself in a position like ours, and it's easy to get that sort of tunnel vision that is just about the successes for yourself and your team. I did believe this team was capable of success, Seb. That's why I say about ambition. In management, you tend to have cycles. Jacques just alluded to the 2 or 3 year cycle that we go for. In that 3 years, which is we've had more to deal with in them 3 years than normal positions of management would incur. You look at building 2 or 3 teams as such, not just building on a team. It's needed to be rebuilt on 2 or 3 occasions in that sort of 2.5 year period. But we're at that 3 year cycle. And I always say, and it's my own personal goals and my own personal targets, that there should be some relative success at the end of that 3 year cycle because your team is where it needs to be. I have fears going forward, which we'll touch on in terms of squad and personnel, I'm sure, at later stages of this podcast. That 3 year cycle, I felt that this team was capable. It was more than capable. If I look here at the league table, we've played Dartford once, we've played Dorking twice, we've played St Albans twice, we've played Eastbourne, we've played Oxford, we've played Hungerford, we've played Ebbsfleet twice. That's the top 8. We've got a run in that most would feel really comfortable with, and that's not me disrespecting any other teams in the division. It's a tough division, but we thought we were capable. We thought we were very much on the right, track to success. But what I looked at, and I've just touched on it a little while ago, is if we'd have had success and we'd have been doing that without, as I've just said, the fans, and then going into a division with a budget that would struggle in our division because of the financial commitments to getting us over the line this year. That's being irresponsible, Seb. That's not looking at anything other than yourself. Where do we get to in the summer? What demands do I put on Jacques and the board for a competitive budget next year? It wouldn't be achievable. We wouldn't be capable. So it wouldn't be an enjoyable experience. And the way I look at it, Seb, and I'm trying to dress it up as positive as we can in tough times, that let's look to try and the majority of this squad, and let's make as much effort as we possibly can as a football club, because I'll be putting some demands on Jacques on that in our centenary year. Is there a better year to get promotion and get to the highest levels of non-league football? That's a challenge for all, and that's a challenge for me personally, and that's the target for me personally and my management team. It's tough at the moment, because there is still a level of despondency and sadness in where we find ourselves, but when the page turns, it'd be nothing but positive and looking forward.
Yeah, exactly. I speak as a fan here. The second season in a row, like you said, we're on the right path. We're looking towards doing something special for the second year in a row. And I know we know the reasons behind it, but it is still disappointing and frustrating. The next couple of weeks, essentially, is your hope that we try and bookend everything and move on so we can start planning for next season?
Yeah, I think that's, as I said at the start of the podcast, what we want next is clear direction and decision from the National League Board on what is happening with this season. And it needs to happen within the next week, tops. Yeah. If I wake up tomorrow or Monday morning and we're told that there's been a U-turn and the grants are coming, we'll be cracking on as per usual. I don't envisage that happening. The DCMS have made their position very clear. I don't think it's going to change. So unless by some miracle, we get funding from some other source, Premier League, wherever, I do not envisage that happening. So, we need clear direction, and then we need to know what's happening for 21-22. We assume, and although there's been a lot of assumptions over the past year, which is correct, that we will be starting as per usual in the first week of August with fans and a normal season ahead of us. And as such, we would prepare for it. We have to take into consideration, as Gary said, he'll look to retain the majority of the squad that he wants to keep. What's going to be hard is what are those guys going to do between now and that pre-season, because they're going to miss out on a lot of football. Now, they can stay fit. You can have training sessions, but it's not the same as being involved in competitive football week in, week out, which is the norm prior to a little break and then your pre-season again. So this is new territory for everyone. And some of the players are going to find it not just at our club, across the board, are going to find it very difficult to keep their levels of fitness up and be ready to get back on the horse once the pre-season starts again. There's a lot of unknowns, but knowing how Gary works and how his management team works, and Mark, who's for me is just probably one of the best fitness coaches in the league, we've got the best team behind us to prep for that in very trying and difficult circumstances. I know that Gary will approach that as diligently and as professionally as ever. I'm confident that once we've got that direction from the league, Gary and I can sit down and start prepping for next season.
Yeah. Actually, Gary, I had one question which is quite interesting, and I know it's a bit hypothetical and a bit because we don't know what's happening. But given the quality of our squad, is there a slight concern that if the National League above carries on playing and the National League North and South don't, but the main league carries on playing, is there a concern that they might get snapped up?
Yeah, I think as well as we've done, Seb, I would expect there to be. I've already spoke to one in regards to that. Yeah, I would. That is a concern, and we go back to that 3-year cycle, and I can tell you how it normally works in that 3-year cycle, because on both times we got to the playoffs in my previous club at the end of those 2 cycles. The challenge is if there's not success to the next level is where the rest that squad ends up, because you're out there, you're highlighting your qualities on a regular basis, and we've done that majority of this season. So the challenge for us as a club, myself, Jacques, the board and everyone else, once we've got some direction, is how quickly we can get secured the players with next year in mind. I have an idea how to approach that. I've already started thinking that way, Seb. I think we will as a management team try and continue a training session a week the way through and have no break. That is something we've discussed at management team level. To keep the majority of this group together is going to take it's going to be a real task. Because if you're one of the big boys in our division or you're one of the leagues above, we see Ryan Hill and Danilo move on this summer just gone. And I have no doubt that there's some in our group that are capable of that as well. I think they've enjoyed the environment they've worked in. They know how professional we are, how demanding we are, how structured we are, and what a fantastic football club they're playing for as well. I think that's important. But the bright lights of progression and if you're an ambitious individual like the two we just mentioned exactly. You're going to have options. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but it's a challenge and it's something we'll embrace and we'll get on with. And if we have to fill some holes because of some players leaving, then that's, again, the challenges that lie ahead. Recruitment is everything. As much as we all talk about tactics and organisation and structure, this is a nigh-on professional league. Most teams work to that, to work to them levels. I mean, I'd like to think ours are as good as any, if not better, in certain aspects. But the bottom line is, it is about recruitment. It's about getting the right players in, the right players for your group, for the dynamics of your group. And obviously good enough for the division, but that's something that we'll tackle when and how. We've already got some different bits in mind and different players that that we'd like to pursue. But the first challenge will be to secure most of this really talented group of players that we've assembled.
Centenary season, Jacques, that might be a little bit of a pull for the players. I don't know. You'll have to ask them, but that will hopefully. Is that something that we should all be positive about?
100%. Sod's law, I suppose. That we've just managed to hit a global pandemic coming to our centenary. Yeah, who knew? But yeah, it's a massive positive, and I think the news appears to be getting a little bit better from what's coming out with regards to numbers and cases and vaccination levels and everything else. We hope we're moving forward on that front, and if we're coming out of this whole situation over the next 3-4 months, that's a massive positive. And if you're a fan of Hampton Richmond Borough Football Club, the other massive positive is that we've got our centenary year ahead of us, our centenary season, if you like. We maybe would have been in a position where we'd have had some stuff structured already in preparation for those celebrations. I think everyone will appreciate and understand that's not been possible to date because we've been trying to get through this whole period, and it's very hard to set up matches and things like that when you don't know when you're going to be able to have people attending. There's no point putting a match on, with some legends or against a big side or anything like that if there's not going to be anyone there. It's a pretty pointless exercise. Yeah. So until there is a clear path on when we're going to be able to do those sort of things, it's very hard to structure the sort of celebrations. But as you well know, Seb, we've started discussions on that, and I would say to the fans, we are working on it, and as and when we've got a clearer picture, we will start letting about what activities are going to be taking place to mark this historic year. Yeah, exactly. And if anyone is listening and has any suggestions, ideas, or anything that they think we should do, doesn't necessarily mean we'll do it, but please do send the email to media@hamptonfc.net. And I'm just trying to collate that and trying to push on, make the most of what looks like we might have a few spare Saturdays and weekends, unfortunately, and we'll try and make the most of that and do that. But I suppose, Gary, my last question for you probably would be someone who I know how much you love football, and at the moment, like you said, you will be doing the training sessions and stuff like that. Is there anything that you're going to try and do? Yeah, I think if the National League continues, I think I'll piggyback Dowse. I've already spoke to him about that, and do some sort of game watch for him and opponent watch for him, and do a little bit in and around that. And take in a bit of the National League, I guess. I think that's something I will do. I think it's something my team and my group of players aspire to. And that's all we can do. There's not going to be much else we can be doing. I'm a little bored, if I'm being totally honest with you, with the Premier League on TV, which I'm sure I speak for most at the moment. I think the lack of emotion and lack of crowd participation, it's now just got to the stage you're fed up with the fake noise and the fake cheers and whatnot. I've even switched that off now just to listen to the players screaming and shouting at each other and obscenities and such like. It's got to that stage where that bores you now. Even Dawn has said to me on a few occasions, we got every time there's a game on telly, we've got it on in the background, and I normally sit there
glued to it and watching every fine detail, but I sit there now on my phone. I'm now with me book or what, and you sort of because it's, I don't like to say it, it's not the same. The novelty's worn off now, isn't it? So I think getting in a bit of National League games and such like, and maybe doing a little bit with Douse and such like, I think keep me occupied and keep me interested. And that's, as I say, all we can do. I will stay very much in contact with the players, and like I say, try and keep them engaged and keep them together, because that is the big thing that we've got to try and achieve, is keeping them engaged for these 3 or 4 months, and and familiar with each other, especially if we want to take the majority of this group into next year. So, and that'll be the plan.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jacques, I suppose the next thing we're waiting for National League directive, which we've probably have been for a while.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I suppose that's the next thing until plan for Tuesday night, a game against Concord, and who knows? We might. But Billericay were supposed to be, or we're meant to be playing the next Saturday. If not, the decision's not made by then. But who knows?
Yeah, obviously the clubs were given 28 days to vote on a resolution. As far as I'm aware, we were, I think, one of the last remaining clubs to vote. I'm sure there's probably a couple more that need to send a response in. I would hope that, and I'm assuming that once they have a majority of one sort or another, they'll be able to announce. So I expect there will be some communication this week. As I say, until there is communication, we're in this limbo again that we've been in for such a long time. And all we can do, as we've already talked about, is be as professional as possible, which we are from top to bottom, including the players and staff and the volunteers and everyone else. We carry on as if this season was still going until such time as we know it's definitely not. And at that point, we stop and we turn the page, as you said, and work on a return to proper football, something where we can enjoy it. When Gary was talking about finding football boring and not enjoying it, and the sort of fake crowd noise and stuff, as a Chelsea fan, I thought you'd be used to it. But,
I was waiting.
So that's coming from one of the loft clangers, you know.
It would be nice if you actually supported the team you should be supporting. But no, in all seriousness, it has been weird without the fans there. We talked about it a lot. Gary hit the nail on the head there. He used to sit there engrossed in football, and now it's just something on in the background, because without that electricity and that noise and that atmosphere, it really loses something. It really does. It's amazing. I've got the England-Italy rugby game on in the background now. It's just weird. And it's the same for all sports, all big sports, where it goes to show the sport is one thing, but the attendance, the fans, the people there who feed off it, and that is what creates the game. That's what creates the whole experience. And without that, it's just going through the motions as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I suppose one thing, looking at positives and stuff like that, we've had a lot of good feedback, and I know the players themselves actually gave me some great feedback on what the media team and everyone's done so far this season in difficult circumstances. But it's our job to keep up that whatever happens, and I don't know, we might have to get creative and things like that. But I suppose, again, if anyone is listening, and I know Jack says this a lot, and it is true, it's expensive to run a football club and to do all these things, even if you are not playing games, etc., etc. So you can either donate at hrbfc.live, or if you have a bigger wallet, then please email the chairman at hamptonfc.net and try and get involved in our centenary season, and B, hopefully another stab at trying to get promoted. And like Gary said, I think that probably should be the aim for everyone. It's between now and the start of whenever the next season does start. That would be a season to do it in, wouldn't it? And again, in front of fans. If you can in any way or have any ideas, anything, obviously, I'm sure Jacques will back me up on this, and Ben and the board, that we're always open for ideas.
Yeah, and just on that point, Seb, I think we were, I'd like to thank, I've had communications from people already with suggestions around fundraising and offering to do bits here and there, and I'm not going to name names, but they know who they are, and I'd like to thank them for the effort they've put in already with their ideas. So, keep them coming. As you say, it doesn't have to just be on an individual basis. We're always looking for sponsors. We're very lucky that we've got a tie-up with FootMob, who supported us brilliantly over the past couple of seasons, and it's unfortunate the way things have gone, but we're lucky to have a sponsor like that on board, and there is opportunity going to the centenary year for other people to come on board as well. So we're always looking for, especially local companies, to really support what is a community club and something which is very important in the environment of the borough. Yeah, all positive. We're all very positive. We might be a little bit frustrated. It was certainly not a very nice night on Thursday when we had to tell the players, but going forward, I think we've all got to be really positive about the future and getting out there in the sunshine again.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, not just talking about that, but obviously Chris Sweet has not actually been able to go to the Chris Sweet Stadium yet. So you might have to wait next year when it's called something different. I don't know. But Gary, I'm going to end on a positive. And obviously we sit here a year ago, coronavirus was just starting to come along and cause us issues, and we missed out and obviously near the playoffs. And then now we've come back to having a good season and obviously being in the mixer if the season does finish. But what has been your favourite bit of the season, essentially? That, even if it's just a moment or a goal it doesn't even have to be a goal. For me personally, it's probably Terrell Miller-Rodney's goal at Dorking for me. That was the sign that showed the rest of the league, I think, that we mean business. Yeah.
I think the performance that that backed that one up as well, Seb, the Dorking won the return game. We knew what a quality side they were, and I think the home performance, knowing that it was so soon after winning their backyard as such, and to really show our teeth and our credentials there, I thought that was a big performance for us. I think the late goal from David Fisher, I think against Ebbsfleet, was only a few weeks ago, but that was a key moment. Couldn't forget the Oldham game again. It wasn't something we didn't experience with the fans, and it wasn't the same as the year before, but to mirror the game of a year before in the same round was just real weird, wasn't it? It was just to have that game served up again. But I was really proud of that performance on the day, and Harry Kuehl in the office after, obviously social distancing, Seb, but to really be complimentary of us and really say some nice words made you feel that you were moving very much in the right direction. As I've just said, we've had some tough games. My points return target is maybe not as good after 17 games as I'd want it, but it's still kept us in the top 6 or 7, which was the challenge. And we've been in there most of the season, that top 7. And as I've just said to you early part of this podcast, that we played some tough games over the course of them 17 games, and we had some, I wouldn't say lesser games, because that's, as I've just said, that's maybe been a bit disrespectful. There's been lots of highlights. We wasn't creeping up on anyone this year on the back of last year, so that was a challenge in itself, and we overcome that. And I still believe we hadn't played our best football, Seb. I still felt there was more to come. We're no Charlie, no Luke. We had Terrell out the side for long periods. We weren't really at, you would say, full strength, but was still right in the mix and fighting. But there was more to come. And that's, I suppose, the bit that frustrates you more than anything, that we were still going to find our best football for me. Gutted at present, despondent at present. And of course, I'm the type of individual that will move forward and look forward very quickly. Just at the moment, last 48 hours has been tough, because I represent the change room. I represent them 18, 20 players that are gutted with me. But it is what it is, Seb. We've got to look forward.
Yeah, exactly. Third time lucky next year, and we'll be all right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. Thanks very much to Jacques and Gary for giving up their Saturday afternoons. As mentioned, if you've got any ideas, suggestions, or anything to do with the football club, get in touch with us at media@hamptonfc.net. And like I said, if you've got a big wallet, please get in touch with chairman at hamptonfc.net. But thanks very much to both of you. And I hope in a couple of weeks the picture's a lot clearer and we can already start looking for the next season. But given everything that's happened over the last few months, who knows what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. So, but thanks very much. Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Cheers, sir. Cheers, guys.